Sean, can you hear me yet?
Yes, we can.
Hey, let's go. How are you, buddy?
Good. How are you doing?
I'm good. How many people we got there in Portland High?
About 100 people out there?
Good, good. Well, I'm delighted to be with you, and I understand you've got some questions you're going to relay from your schoolmates, and be glad to tackle them. Let's go.
All right, awesome. My name is Sean Foley. I'm a senior here at Portland High School. We've got you here in the auditorium. I'll be moderating the questions today and giving a little intro about you for the audience out there. Now, before we get started, here are a few things all of you in the audience should know about Senator King. He was born in Virginia, but spent most of his adult life in Maine. After graduating from Dartmouth College, he attended University of Virginia Law School and entered private legal practice up here in Maine, in Brunswick, where he resides today. And in 1989, he founded Northeast Energy Management Incorporated. The company developed and installed and operated large-scale electrical energy conservation projects all throughout South Central Maine. In '94, the senator, already well known as a television host on Maine Public Broadcasting, ran for the office of governor, defeating both the Democratic and Republican candidates twice, serving from 1995 to 2003. As governor, he famously improved the safety of our school children and endorsed the Maine Learning Technology Initiative, which capitalized on the benefits of the use of technology in all Maine middle schools in the form of Apple laptops, like the one we have you here on today. Senator King returned to legal practice after his final term as governor and began lecturing at Bowdoin and Bates while co-founding a company focused on developing wind power, again here in Maine. He ran for Olympia Snow's vacant Senate seat for the state of Maine and won, assuming the office in January of last year. Senator King, the format of today's Skype will be as follows. Students in 3 social studies classes suggested 30 questions to ask you. Students then voted on the questions for importance. The 10 questions will be presented by students in order of the votes they received. We hope to allow about 4 minutes for each question and answer. And our first question will be asked by Shelby Montanez.
Hello, Senator King.
Shelby, how are you?
Hi. My question is, while you were governor, you vetoed a bill which would have raised Maine's minimum wage by 25 cents an hour, per hour. Now, what do you think about increasing the federal minimum wage to $9 an hour? Do you think it will have a big effect on business and minimum wage workers in Maine?
I think we should increase the federal minimum wage. I'm not sure whether the right number is $8.50 or $9, but I think it should be increased. And the reason I vetoed that bill back almost 15 years ago was because I felt that it should be done on the federal level so that it would be the same across the country. I was worried about Maine sort of getting out of step with the rest of the country. So I think it will have a positive effect on low-income wage earners. I don't think it will have a terribly negative effect on businesses. There's always a danger that an employer of a small business, like a sandwich shop or something, might say, well, I will hire 5 people at $7.50 an hour, but if it's $9 an hour, I'll only hire 4. And, you know, that's the kind of trade-off that you have to think about. But I think it's time to have an increase in the minimum wage, and I suspect that it will be before the Congress sometime in the next several months, if not this year, and I intend to support it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good afternoon, Senator. My name is Shannon McBorrow. Some reports state that Maine college students have the 2nd highest student loans in the country. What ideas and plans do you have to change the student loan industry, and when might these changes take effect?
Well, the student loan issue is a really serious issue, and if I had all the answers, you know, I'd run for president, I guess. No, I'm not going to do that, sorry. Don't even think about that. But it's a really serious problem, and I think there are a number of different ways to try to look at it. The first, I think, is information for students. I think quite often students get into debt before they know what it really means. And they're making a lot of decisions about going to college and what their options are, and it's sort of easy to sign that paper, and then you realize 4 or 5 years later that it's a real burden. So information up front, I think, is important. Number 2, I think we ought to be talking about loan forgiveness programs, at least for people going into jobs that we need. For example, STEM teachers. We really need teachers in math and science, and if somebody's willing to go into that and commit, then I think there should be some level of forgiveness of the loans in order to induce people to make those kinds of decisions. My mother had a program like that 70 years ago where she got a college scholarship, and in exchange for teaching after she left college, part of her scholarship was forgiven. So it's not exactly a new idea. The other thing I think is we have to maintain a system whereby the interest rates are as low as possible, and perhaps the interest rate could be graduated according to what your earnings are. If somebody comes out of college and is going into being an investment banker and they're making hundreds of thousands of dollars a year, then perhaps they should pay off the loans a little faster at a higher interest rate than somebody that's choosing to go and work in the inner city, be a social worker or something. We don't want to have the student loans drive what you do after school and drive people out of the helping profession. So those are some thoughts I would have on that issue.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Good afternoon, Senator. My name is Caitlin Samesex. My question for you is, you've gone on the record supporting same-sex marriage and believe that Defense of Marriage Act is unconstitutional. If the Supreme Court rules that DOMA is unconstitutional, what effects do you think this might have on our national debt? How might we pay for extended benefits for partners or spouses of same-sex marriages?
I don't think it will have a significant effect. I think it's just common justice, in my view. I think it's a civil rights, a basic human rights issue. There may be some marginal effect, but I don't think it will be to the point where it will be any problem. We've got debt problems as it is. This is not going to increase it significantly. And as I say, I think this is a basic human rights issue, and I felt that way for a long time. And Maine has, as you know, embraced marriage equality at the ballot box last year, and I think that's an expression of the way the people of Maine feel about it, and that's the way I feel.
Do you believe that other parts of benefits that we do give out statewide would be cut or affected in any manner?
I wouldn't think so, again, because I don't think the numbers are that large. You're talking about a fairly limited size group of people, so I don't think you would see enough of a change to occasion cuts to benefits to other people. I frankly have never heard that argument before. I don't think that'll be an issue, simply, again, because I don't think you're talking about a large number of people that would take advantage of that, be in a position to take advantage of whatever benefits are available.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. This is a question I have for you, Senator. Before being elected as senator, you worked in the private sector. As a politician and elected official, in what way has this experience prepared you for political life? How do business skills transfer to your job as a senator?
Well, you've really asked two questions, and I think they're really good questions. Number one, I believe that my experience in the private sector, in energy and business and law, has been tremendously helpful to me, both as governor and now as senator. If you think about what is the role of the political system, it's to make the rules whereby we play the game of life, and it really helps to have people who have played the game to be making the rules. So, for example, if we're talking about regulation of business or health insurance or workers' compensation or any of those kinds of things, having experienced that, having hired people, having fired people, having bought workers' comp insurance, bought health insurance, shopped for it, all of those kinds of experiences provide the information that has made me, I think, a better representative, because those are the kinds of issues that we're dealing with. In terms of the skills involved, I think it's also relevant. The skills involved in the private sector, negotiation, goal setting, planning, communication, all of those kinds of things, those are exactly the same skills that are involved in the work that I'm doing now. So I'm one who thinks that having that private sector experience really makes you a better public servant. And I know a lot of the young people, yourself might be one of them, are thinking about public office and running for the legislature or something. I say, great, that's fine, but be sure you get that private sector experience first. I didn't run for my first public office until I was 50 years old. And I can tell you for sure that I was a better governor at 50 than I would have been at 40 because of the experiences that I had over that prior decade. That's not to say that younger politicians can't do a good job, but I just think experience in the private sector is a really important asset to bring to public sector positions.
Thank you very much,
Yes,
Senator.
sir.
Good afternoon, Senator. I'm Chris I.
Chris.
I was wondering why you didn't support the ban of semi-automatic assault weapons.
Yeah, I can tell you that. I'll try to be as brief as I can because those weapons are no different than thousands of semi-automatic rifles that are sitting in closets throughout Maine. The only difference is what they look like. They don't shoot any faster. They don't shoot any more bullets in a short amount of time. They don't shoot with any more power. They don't shoot any further. The mechanism of the gun is identical to a hunting rifle that you know, people in Maine and throughout the country have had for many years. It's a gun, and I just don't think it makes sense to ban something because of its looks. Now, I did vote for the limit on magazine size, the number of bullets that you can have in a semi-automatic rifle, to limit it to 10, because I felt that was a functional way to try to prevent some of these tragedies. The other piece of this is that only 4% of the gun homicides in America last year were committed with rifles of any kind, whether they're semi-automatic hunting rifles or assault rifles. The vast majority, over 90% of the gun crimes are committed with handguns. And that's why my principal focus was on background checks, to keep those handguns and all guns out of the hands of people like convicted felons and people with mental illness who have been proven to be in danger either to themselves or others in terms of violence. So to me, the key deal was background checks. I was really disappointed we weren't able to pass that in the Senate, but I think there's a reasonably good chance, or at least some chance, we're going to be able to bring it back. I know a lot of work's going on that right now. But on the assault rifle thing, I just couldn't convince myself that A, it would be effective, and B, that it would really make a difference. And for that reason, I didn't support it.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Hello, Senator King. Thank you for joining us today. My name is Robert LaJoy. You state that the United States should gradually take troops out of Afghanistan, but continue to give that country economic and technical support. Can you describe your plan for the United States' involvement in Afghanistan and what that country might look like in 10 to 20 years?
Well, it's awful hard to say what anything will look like in 10 to 20 years. It'll depend on the Afghanis themselves and what kind of government they want and what kind of country they want. We've done them a tremendous favor by knocking out the Taliban, but now it's going to be the question of whether they can maintain that situation. We're facing tremendous challenges all around the world from groups like the Taliban, from Al-Qaeda, and a lot of it is based on the disaffection and anger of people that are mostly involved, that are in poverty, that don't have any prospects, they don't have any opportunity, they don't see a better life, and they're taken in by the radical kind of jihadist rhetoric. And I think the best thing we can do is to try to help Afghanistan and other areas get on their feet economically. And if people feel that they have a positive economic future or positive future for themselves and their families, they're less likely to engage in violence. I mean, that's been proven all over the world, whether it's in Northern Ireland or Afghanistan or in the Middle East or anywhere else. So I think we are going to have some role to play in the future in terms of economic development support, but you know, at some point we can't be the policeman of the world, and we can't keep troops in a place like Afghanistan indefinitely. So I think the president made the right decision to do a gradual drawdown, finishing up next year. And at some point, the Afghans are going to have to take control of their own country.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Good afternoon, Senator King. My name is Harriet, and my question for you is, you have called for the continuation of a tariff on imported athletic footwear and reject the removal of the tariff in trade talks with Vietnam, citing the potential loss of jobs at New Balance, Skowhegan, and Madison factories. In your plan to use tariffs to protect domestic company, what other ways do you think could help domestic production? What opinion do you have about free trade?
Well, my opinion about free trade I think free trade is a great phrase. It's a great idea, but I'm not sure that it makes total sense for the United States to engage in free trade agreements with countries that don't have the same standards that we have, for example, for labor protections, environmental protections, occupational health and safety, not let alone compensation for their workers. So if we enter into a free trade agreement with a country that doesn't have those standards, we're really putting our companies at an impossible disadvantage. And indeed, we've lost 45,000 factories in the last 10 years, not workers, factories in this country. And it's been a huge loss to the middle class in America. And I believe in free trade agreements, but I think that there have to be some residual protections if we're going to have any manufacturing base at all. Now, there's talk of a free trade agreement with Europe that they're discussing right now. That may make a little more sense because they have all the same kinds of protections for workers and the environment that we have. But I don't think it's fair to tell a Maine company, you've got to spend millions of dollars to clean up the air and water in your factory, and yet you've got to compete against a factory in South America or Asia that has no such requirements. That's just impossible. So that's kind of that's sort of where I am on trade. If you want to follow up, if you get in touch with my office, I wrote an essay on this subject when I was teaching at Bowdoin, before I was running for office, so it's not political, it's how I feel. And if you call my office in Washington or email them, they'll send you a copy of this little essay I wrote about trade and free trade, because I think free trade is important, but I think we also have to be smart about it.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Good afternoon, Senator. My name is Maria Mirijanyan, and my question is, where do you see Maine in 10 years in terms of environmental sustainability? And what would be some projects or goals that you would like to achieve regarding sustainability?
Well, Maine, as you know, is one of the leading states in the country in terms of sustainability. In terms of recycling, I think we want to have one of the highest recycling rates in the country. We took steps 20, 30 years ago ahead of many other states in terms of cleaning up our air and water. We have a very vigorous environmental protection apparatus in Maine, the Department of Environmental Protection, the Land Use Regulation Commission. We also have wonderful and very, I guess, vigorous and strong private sector organizations like the Audubon Society, the Natural Resources Council of Maine, and the Nature Conservancy, and the Trust for Public Land. So I think Maine is already in a very good place. I think in the future, one of the biggest things we can do in terms of sustainability is to get off of oil. We are one of the highest oil use states in the country, particularly in heating our homes. And to the extent we can get off of oil and move on, ideally, to things like wind, solar, geothermal, but as a transition, at least, to natural gas where it's available, that will help the environment of Maine. It'll also help our economy because oil is so expensive and is likely to remain so. So if I had one target over the next 10 years, I think it would be to substantially reduce Maine's oil consumption. And that's already happening. Over the last 4 or 5 years, it's happened rather steadily, and I think we should continue to do that. But oil heat is one place where we could help clean up the air, help our folks keep money in their pockets, and I think would help with sustainability. One quick example, I was in northern Maine last week in Aroostook County. They're moving a lot of their larger institutions like the Northern Maine Community College, the University of Maine at Presque Isle, the University of Maine at Fort Kent, the hospital in Fort Kent, toward pellets, wood pellets, which are a manufactured fuel from wood, which comes from Maine, substituting that for oil, and the money stays in Maine. Every time we buy a gallon of oil in Maine, 78 cents leaves the state. Pellets, it virtually all stays in Maine. It's our own oil, if you will. It's our own energy source. So I think that's the direction we have to move in, and I think it's good for the country and also for Maine, particularly in terms of sustainability.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good afternoon, Senator. Thanks for joining us. My name is Dana Kunaholm. My question is, what is your position on the immigration reform, and do recent events in Boston affect your thinking?
The answer is yes and no. I'm supportive of the work that's being done now in the Senate by the 8 senators, 4 Republicans, 4 Democrats. I think this is an issue it's time to address. I think it will help us economically. I think it will help us culturally. I think it will help us intellectually. I think it's just a big positive. This country, with the exception of the Native Americans and the African Americans who were brought here against their will, everyone in this country, including you and me, are children of immigrants. And in Portland, we know a lot of them are recent immigrants, and they bring vitality and ideas and energy and a lot of positives to the country. What happened in Boston was a tragedy, and you know, these 2 young guys were misguided. We were learning, how they got this into their head, that this was going to be some kind of good idea, is terrible. But to derail a rational immigration program, which everyone agrees is broken at the present time because of this incident, I think would be tragic. And people talk about amnesty. Well, we've got 11 million illegal aliens in the country today. It's totally impractical to try to do something about that, to deport them or anything. And so, in effect, we have amnesty now. The bill that's being talked about, instead of this kind of haphazard amnesty, talks about a long-term path, and it's not an easy path. It's a 10-year path that involves getting a job, paying taxes, learning English, paying a fine for having entered illegally, and then having the opportunity to move towards citizenship. I think it'll only strengthen the country, as the waves of immigrants that have come here since the beginning of the country have done throughout history. So I'm hoping we can move it forward, and that what happened in Boston should not have a significant impact.
Thank you, Senator.
Sarah.
Hello, Senator King. My name is Kyra Rickett. I'm a very green-friendly person and was pleased to see wind turbines placed off the shore of Booth Bay Harbor. What are your thoughts on the complaints from the public about apparent blade noise?
I'm sorry, I didn't. Are you talking about the wind project?
Yes. I asked what are your thoughts on complaints from the wind turbine blades off the shore of Booth Bay Harbor?
Well, the sound from, you happen to ask me a question I know a fair amount because I was in the wind power business. The sound from a wind turbine is a matter of physics, and what you hear. Many people, there's some confusion. You can't hear the motor, the turbine, or the mechanical noise at all. It's the sort of swishing of the blades as they go around. And if you're too close, it can be annoying, although, that's in the ear of the beholder. Plenty of people I've taken up to see wind projects, and they've been just a few hundred yards away, and they're saying, what's the argument about? I don't really notice this much. But there are people who find it annoying, but it's almost pure, it's entirely a function of distance. And there are laws of physics. The further away you are, the sound drops. In fact, it's 1/2 the distance equals 6 decibels. So for each increment of distance you go out, it drops. And what I believe is that if you site a wind project properly, not too close to houses, you're going to not have a problem with sound. As far as the one that's set out in the ocean, nobody's going to hear that. I mean, it's just too far away. The general rule of thumb is that a large turbine, anything over a mile to a mile and a half, it's going to be a very unusual event that you would hear it. There are circumstances with peculiar weather patterns where it might be, but it's certainly that offshore project, which I think is going to be something like 12 miles offshore. Nobody's going to hear that except maybe a few seagulls.
Thank you.
Hello again, Senator King. Can you talk to us about your ideas on public education in both Maine and the United States?
Well, that's a broad question. I got to do that in 4 minutes.
All right, I've got another question.
No, I can. Let me give you some thoughts on that, and I'll try to do it in less than 4 minutes. I think that the world has changed significantly in terms of education, and we're sort of behind the times. If you think about education and the education that we all traditionally know, it's basically consists of teachers conveying content. When was America discovered? 1492. That's a conveyance of content. We live in a world now where the content is so available and accessible, particularly on the internet with Google and other search engines, that I think the function of education in the future isn't necessarily to convey content, but to teach us how to use the content, how to access the content, how to tell the good content from the bad content, and how to use it to solve problems. Because that's the challenge of the 21st century is how do we teach people to work together to solve problems, to use information collaboratively. And I'll leave you with this thought. If 21st century skills are collaboration, working together, partnerships, utilizing joint information, what I've just outlined would be considered cheating at Portland High School. And I think it's odd that we want people to learn to collaborate, but we kick them out of school if they do it. And I think we need to think about education in an entirely different way. And clearly there has to be content. I mean, in order to learn chemistry, you got to learn the periodic table. But beyond that, I think the instruction has to be more about process, how to use the content, how to get the content, how to solve problems, than necessarily about just conveying the content. And I know that your teachers are working in this area, and the whole access to technology is really changing education fundamentally. A classroom is one of the few places where Shakespeare could wander into the back of the room and feel right at home, where nothing's changed from when he went to school in 1560. So I think we've got to be thinking about how the world has changed and adapt our pedagogy to that.
Thank you very much.
Yes, sir.
Got another one for you. Can you tell us about your transition to the United States Senate? What have you found most challenging and most rewarding?
Well, the most challenging part, when you're a governor and you see a problem, you can reach out and try to fix it, and you have some ability to set the agenda and to try to work and get things done. The U.S. Congress is set up to be slow and cumbersome, and boy, did they succeed in that desire. I mean, it's frustrating in that sense. I'm one of 100 in the Senate, then there are 435 in the House, so you measure progress in inches. That's the most frustrating part of this, and the most frustrating part of the transition. On the other hand, I knew what I was getting into. I mean, I had worked here as a young man at the U.S. Senate, so it wasn't like I came down expecting to change the world in the first week. So that's the frustrating part. The good part is I've really been impressed with the people. There are very few what you would call stereotypical U.S. senators, sort of pompous and making speeches all the time. These are regular people who are generally from very humble origins. They're, they're from families in the Midwest. I heard Senator Heidkamp from North Dakota this morning at the Senate prayer breakfast, which I attend Wednesday mornings. And, she was from a town of 90 people in North Dakota, this tiny town in North Dakota, 7 children, got through college, law school, attorney general, now she's a United States Senator. And that's typical of the people that I've met down here. So really good people, different politics, and the politics gets in the way sometimes, but I'm hoping we're going to be able to put the country first every now and then and really get moving on some important issues.
Wonderful. Thank you.
Yes, sir.
I've got one more question for you. This will be the last one. How's your experience as an independent in the Senate been so far?
Better than I thought. As coming down here as an independent, there are only two of us, myself and Bernie Sanders from Vermont, and I really didn't know quite what to expect. I had hoped that I would be accepted and allowed to, fully participate, but, you never can be sure. It's sort of uncharted territory. It's actually gone very well. I had to choose at the beginning which side to, what they call caucus with, which is sort of meet with, because if I tried to stay a pure independent, no association with either side, the problem with that is a lot of the work here is done in committee. And in order to be on a committee, particularly a good committee, you have to be, the parties appoint the committees. So I really had to make a choice. I chose the Democrats, and they were willing to honor my independence, not push me to make party line votes, which they've done that. I ended up with some very significant committees, armed services, intelligence, budget, and rules, so I'm doing serious work. And, I can't speak for all these people that I work with, but I think they're taking me seriously and listening to the things that I'm working on. And I feel very positive. I've got good relations with senators of both parties, and was talking this morning with a Republican senator about something we want to work on in the intelligence field together, and working with some Democrats on other legislation. So by and large, I felt pretty good about it. It's sometimes frustrating to not have a full-blown party affiliation, but frankly, I feel like I'm very comfortable where I am, and I feel like I can be effective on behalf of Maine, and that's really the most important criteria.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
That concludes our Skype session for today. And on behalf of Portland High School, we appreciate your time and the voice you give to the people of Maine. We hope you'll consider a visit to Portland High School in the near future. I know we'd love to have you.
Well, I've been there before. I was there with one of my heroes. Steve Jobs and I appeared together in your auditorium about 10 years ago. It was one of the most exciting days of my life. That's a great memory of Portland High. I have a great respect for what you all are doing. I used to meet with your students when I was governor, and I congratulate you and hope you'll come down and visit us here in Washington, and I hope I'll see many of you in Maine. So if you see me on the street, say hello, and I'll look forward to meeting you.
I'll make sure to. All right. I'd like a round of applause for Senator King from the audience.
Thank you.